The halls of Downton Abbey have echoed with laughter, tears, and secrets for years. But none have carried as much weight as those tied to Lady Mary. And one day, she simply had to walk away. Why would the woman who stood at the very heart of Downton make such a heartbreaking choice? The truth is deeper, darker, and more human than anyone expected. Lady Mary Crawley was never just another member of the Crawley family. From the moment she stepped into the world of Downton Abbey, she became the figure everyone watched, strong, proud, and always perfectly composed. But behind her calm face lived a storm she rarely let anyone see. To the world, she was the future of Downton. To herself, she was a woman trying to hold together a life that kept slipping through her fingers. Mary grew up knowing that the weight of her family's name rested on her shoulders. She didn't ask for it, she didn't choose it, but she accepted it because she believed she had no other choice. Every step she took, every word she spoke, had to match what society expected from a daughter of the Crawley house. She learned early that showing softness was dangerous, that crying was weakness, that love could be taken away. So she wore her confidence like armor. Still, what made Mary unforgettable was not her coldness, but the warmth she tried so hard to hide. She loved deeply, even when it hurt her. She wanted happiness, even when she told herself she didn't deserve it. Every viewer could see the battle inside her, a woman raised to be strong, yet longing for something gentle. And Downton itself shaped her into a myth. The grand rooms, the endless rules, the whispers of tradition, all pushed her to become a symbol. Rather than a person, to the family, she was the one who must carry the future. To the staff, she was the perfect lady of the house. But inside, she was still Mary, a daughter, a sister, a widow, trying to keep her heart from breaking again. This tension between who she was and who she had to be created the legend of Lady Mary, and it also planted the first seed of her eventual goodbye. Because no one, not even Mary Crawley, can live forever under the weight of an image that never belonged to her in the first place. From the outside, Lady Mary looked like she had everything: wealth, beauty, respect, and a grand estate waiting for her to guide it. But what people didn't see were the invisible pressures that wrapped around her life long before she was even old enough to understand them. Being born into the Crawley family meant she didn't simply live at Downton. She belonged to it. And belonging comes with a price. Every woman of her class was expected to act a certain way, speak a certain way, even think a certain way. Mary was trained to follow these rules as if they were as real as the stone walls of the estate. She had to smile when she wanted to scream. She had to be polite when she felt broken. She had to appear strong even when her heart was falling apart piece by piece. These rules weren't written on paper, they lived in every stare, every whispered judgment, every expectation placed upon her shoulders. And behind all this stood the truth she could never escape. Downton's future depended on her, not her sisters, not distant cousins. Mary, she was the heir in spirit long before she was the heir in title. It didn't matter what she wanted for herself. Her duty was always louder, always heavier. Even when she tried to escape it, the world around her reminded her that she was not just Mary, she was Lady Mary. Whether she liked it or not, the pressure deepened after Matthew's death. Suddenly, the estate's survival wasn't just a tradition, it became a responsibility she felt chained to. A part of her mourned her husband, but another part mourned the life she would never have. People often admired her grace and control, but few understood that these qualities were carved out of pain. She could not fall apart because Downton could not fall apart, so she carried on, silently absorbing duties that drained her spirit. These hidden burdens shaped everything she did. They forced her into choices she didn't want, marriages she questioned, sacrifices she never asked for. Little by little, the expectations placed upon her grew heavier than the walls of Downton itself. The world saw her as cold, but inside she was simply tired of holding up a legacy she didn't choose. She's tired of being strong when she needed someone to be strong for her. And it is here, in these quiet pressures, that the path toward her final goodbye truly began. There are moments in life that hit so deeply, they split your world into before and after. For Lady Mary, these moments came one after another. each one carving a new shadow across her heart. And with every turning point, she stepped further away from the person she used to be, and closer to the woman who would eventually walk out of Downton Abbey for good. The first and most devastating blow was Matthew's death. It wasn't just the loss of her husband. It was the loss of the only person who saw her without masks. Matthew understood her fears, her temper, her hidden softness. With him, she didn't have to pretend. And when he was gone, it felt as if someone had ripped the future right out of her hands. The halls of Downton suddenly felt colder, emptier, almost too big for her grief. She didn't just become a widow. She became a woman searching for parts of herself she wasn't sure existed anymore. Then came the endless struggle of managing the estate. Mary found herself trapped between trying to honor Matthew's vision and trying to keep her own emotions from drowning her. Every decision she made was judged. Every mistake became gossip. She was expected to smile through exhaustion, to lead even when she felt too broken to stand. Each day demanded strength she no longer had, but she could never admit it. Not at Downton. Not when everyone depended on her. Her relationships were another battlefield. Suitors came and went, each one reminding her that her heart still carried scars. She wanted love, but she also feared it. She wanted freedom, but duty kept her tied down, and every time something fell apart, she blamed herself. She wondered if maybe the world was asking her to stay strong because it knew no one else could. That belief became both her shield and her prison. And through all of this, the world outside was changing. Old traditions were dying. The society she was raised to protect was shrinking. Mary, who once stood proudly at the center of a grand era, now found herself watching that era fade in front of her. Each year felt like another door closing, telling her that the life she was fighting to protect no longer existed. These turning points did not break her, but they reshaped her. They sharpened her edges, deepened her silence, slowly pushed her toward a truth she had tried to ignore. Downton Abbey was no longer the place where she could grow. It had become the place where she was standing still. And once she realized that the path to her final goodbye was no longer a possibility, it was a destiny. There wasn't a single explosion, no dramatic argument, no final shouting match that pushed Lady Mary to her breaking point. Instead, it was a quiet moment, one so ordinary that no one else would have noticed. But for Mary, it felt like the world had paused just long enough for her to hear the truth she had been avoiding for years. It happened on a still morning. Sunlight touching the windows of Downton like a soft goodbye. Mary walked through the empty halls, her footsteps whispering across the floors she once ran across as a child. The house that had shaped her entire life now felt strangely unfamiliar. Rooms she used to fill with confidence suddenly seemed too large, too quiet. Almost echoing with memories she had grown tired of carrying, she stopped by a window overlooking the grounds. The fields stretched endlessly, just as they always had, but something inside her had changed. For the first time, she didn't feel connected to the land. She didn't feel the pull of duty or tradition. Instead, she felt a stillness rare. Honest stillness that asked her a question she had never allowed herself to consider. What if staying was no longer strength? What if leaving was? Mary realized that the weight she had been carrying wasn't only the pressure of her family or the expectations of society, it was the weight of a life that no longer belonged to her. She had survived heartbreak, loss, criticism, and the slow collapse of the world she was raised to protect. She had given everything she had to Downton. Somewhere along the way, she had forgotten to live for herself. The moment felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Terrifying, but also strangely peaceful. She knew that if she stayed any longer, she would disappear into the version of herself everyone else expected her to be. She would keep smiling politely, keep hiding her hurt, keep pretending that the woman she had become was enough for her. But she wanted more, not luxury, not escape. She wanted the simple freedom to breathe, to choose, to feel like her life belonged to her again. Leaving meant unlocking a door she had kept shut since childhood. It meant stepping into a world where she wasn't Lady Mary Crawley, the symbol of a dying era, but just Mary, a woman trying to rebuild her own story in that quiet morning. As she stood in the soft light, she finally understood Downton Abbey had been her home, but it could no longer be her future. It wasn't anger or sorrow that guided her decision. It was clarity, the pure, undeniable truth that she had stayed long enough. That was the moment Mary knew she had to let go. When Lady Mary finally stepped away from Downton, the house didn't fall silent overnight, but something inside it shifted forever. It was the kind of change that doesn't shout, it whispers. It settles slowly like dust in a room after a door closes for the last time. No one needed to say her name out loud. Everyone simply felt the space where she used to stand. For the Crawley family, Mary was more than a daughter or a sister. She was the anchor that held their world steady through storms they never expected to survive. She had been the fierce voice in family debates, the sharp mind in financial crises, the quiet strength in their darkest hours. Without her, the house felt a little less certain, a little less guarded, as if the walls themselves were learning how to be strong without her. Edith felt the change first. Their rivalry had shaped both their lives. Even though their relationship softened over time, Mary's presence had always pushed Edith to fight harder, to grow sharper. Now, without Mary's shadow, Edith felt both lighter and strangely lonely. Losing a rival can sometimes hurt as much as losing a friend. Lord Grantham noticed it too. It relied on Mary's instinct, her practicality, her bold courage. She wasn't just his daughter, she had become the future of his estate. With her gone, he found himself staring longer at the fields, wondering how many years were left before tradition slipped completely out of reach. Even the staff felt her absence. Carson missed the firm click of her heels in the corridor. Anna missed the moments when Mary's cold mask cracked just enough to reveal warmth. Mrs. Hughes found herself pausing outside Mary's old room, as if expecting to hear her voice on the other side. Their lives were built around serving Downton. But Mary had shaped the rhythm of the house more than any of them realized, and Downton itself, its very spirit, seemed to shift. Houses hold memories, just like people do. The steps. Mary climbed, the rooms where she laughed, cried, argued, and loved. All of them carried her story. Without her, Downton felt like a book missing its main character. The estate continued, of course, as grand houses always do, but it moved differently, as if adjusting to a new heartbeat. Yet her departure was not only a loss, it was also a signal and unmistakable sign that the world of Downton Abbey was entering its final chapters. The traditions Mary fought to protect were fading. The future she sacrificed herself for was changing faster than the family could hold on to it. Mary leaving wasn't just a goodbye. It was the moment Downton realized that even the strongest ties must loosen, even the brightest figures must step into their own light, and even the grandest houses must learn to stand without the women who once held them together. When Lady Mary walked away from Downton Abbey, it was easy to believe her farewell was final. The door closed behind her with a softness that felt permanent, almost like a chapter sealed forever. But the truth is never that simple. Goodbyes, especially ones born from a lifetime of duty and love, rarely stay clean. They echo, they return. They leave questions floating in the silence long after the footsteps fade. For many, Mary's departure looked like a bold step into freedom. She had carried the weight of the estate for so long that seeing her choose herself felt like a kind of victory. But deep inside, Mary was torn. Downton wasn't just a house she lived in. It was the place that shaped her fears, her courage, her entire identity. Leaving something that defines you doesn't happen in one clean moment. Part of her stayed behind, hidden in the rooms she once commanded. There were days when Mary wondered if she had made the right choice. Days when memories rose like ghosts, the smell of polished wood, the murmurs of evening conversations, the sound of Matthew's laughter echoing through her mind. Some nights, she found herself reaching for the past, as if Downton still lived just behind her shoulder. This wasn't weakness. It was the cost of loving a place so deeply that it becomes part of your bones. And for the people she left behind, it never felt like a true ending. They spoke of her often, not in sadness, but in respect. Lord Grantham would pause during dinner, perhaps thinking of something Mary would have said. Edith would quietly wonder what advice Mary might offer in a difficult moment. Even the staff, who had watched her grow into the powerful woman she became, still carried pieces of her in their routines. Her presence continued like a warm shadow that never fully faded. That is why the question remains: did Mary really say goodbye? Did she'll simply step aside to discover the version of herself that Downton could no longer hold? Perhaps her leaving was not an ending, but a pause, a moment where she allowed herself to breathe outside the walls that shaped her. Maybe she didn't close the door on Downton. She left it slightly open, just enough for her to return. If life ever called her back, goodbyes are rarely final. They are choices made in a moment, shaped by needs that change over time. Mary's goodbye was real, but it was not the kind that erases a past. It was the kind that honors one, because you can leave a house, but you can never fully leave a story that made you who you are in the end. Lady Mary's story at Downton Abbey was never about escape, it was about evolution. She didn't leave because she stopped caring. She left because staying would have meant holding on to a life that no longer allowed her to grow. And sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is step away from the place that shaped them, even when it still holds a piece of their heart. Mary's final goodbye was not written in anger or regret. It was written in quiet strength. It was a choice made after years of fighting, loving, grieving, and rebuilding herself from the ashes of every loss. She had carried Downton through some of its hardest moments, and in doing so, she had carried more than anyone ever realized. But even the strongest souls reach a point where they must choose their own story over the one the world expects them to follow. Her departure reminds us of an unspoken truth. Homes do not define us. We define them. Downton Abbey was grand, but it was Mary who filled it with fire, with honesty, with the kind of resilience that only grows from deep pain. And when she stepped out into the world beyond its gates, she didn't leave the house empty. She left it wiser, softer, more human. And what about Mary? She stepped into a future that was finally hers to shape, a world with no preset expectations, no heavy title controlling her every move. She walked forward not as Lady Mary Crawley, but as Mary, just Mary, strong enough to build a life where her happiness wasn't a luxury, but a right. Perhaps one day she might look back and smile, remembering the woman she was in those long corridors and candlelit rooms. Perhaps she might return for a visit, feeling the familiar warmth of the past. But her journey now belongs to her, not to tradition, not to duty, not even to Downton. Her story teaches us something powerful. Goodbyes are not endings. They are beginnings written in courage. So as the shadows fall across the grand estate and the echoes of the past settle into memories, one truth remains clear. Lady Mary didn't walk away from Downton Abbey to forget it. She walked away so she could finally become the woman she was always meant to be. And that is the beauty of her final goodbye.